And hello, everybody, and welcome to the Network Marketing Leadership Show. It's Tom Chenault, it's Adrian Chenault, and we are fired up today, man. I normally Adrian only comes in for the contact mapping commercials, but we got to see our guest today at the Longmont Startup Week. He was the keynote speaker, so he was like the biggest deal in the whole place. And so I walked in expecting to really see a tightly wound man. Instead, I found the most transparent, vulnerable, authentic, crying human being I think I've ever met in my life. And I fell in love with him. So many things that he did, I just have tried since then to emulate because I finally found my own voice that I'd been searching for about 65 years or more in what he said and in his incredible book called Reboot Leadership and the Art of Growing Up. It's Jerry Colonna. Before we even go to him, what do you think of him?
Yeah, I have been looking forward to this day for a long time, and I had heard of Jerry's work, but had never had a chance to see him in person, or even I hadn't seen video of him. I just had heard a couple of podcasts that you'd been featured on over the years, Jerry. But what struck me is especially Brad Feld, who is somebody I'm a big fan of. Though to hear him speak about you just don't hear people talk about others like that. And so I was clear to me the kind of impact you have on people. And so I dragged the whole team out, them not knowing who you were, to come and see you. And it was everybody's
Truly
jaw
life-changing.
hit the floor during that session. So thank you so much for the work that you have done. And thank you for coming on today to share yourself with our community. We really appreciate it.
And welcome, Jerry Colonna. How are you, sir? Good to have you aboard. Marianne, is he
I'm
first?
blushing.
Yeah, well, we know. We love you, man. You are awesome.
Well, and I appreciate the kind words, and especially from people like Brad Feld, but from the two of you, and to know that I had the impact that I had means the world to me.
I think chasing you for over a year trying to get you on this show had so much to do with God. It was unbelievable because we're standing in a spot right now where I don't even have any idea how many people that I'm involved with in the world as a result of this multi-level marketing that are absolutely scared to death. They are isolated, they're living in fear, they're questioning their very existence. The people that they're talking to are doing the same thing. And you have really, really cut it to the chase about rigorous self-inquiry and looking to what's important instead of what you thought was important. And people have actually been forced to deal with that over the last 4 months. So it's actually perfect timing that we've got you. What do you think about what's going on out in the world? Are people just petrified like I think they are?
Yes, they are. And I think that preconceived notions of the way the world is supposed to be are being ripped apart left and right. I think that we're dealing with political crises, leadership crises, healthcare crises, economic crises, social unrest crises. And the result is that it just feels very much like a constant battering of a storm.
I agree with that.
And call me crazy, but I'm not terrified.
Where do you stand? If you're not terrified, where do you stand? Like in great faith, Jerry?
One of the teachings that has come to me in the last few months comes from one of my Buddhist teachers, Pema Chodron. And she, long before the pandemic hit, wrote a passage in a book called Comfortable with Uncertainty, in which she encourages us to sit like a mountain in the midst of a hurricane.
Wow.
And it felt really appropriate. And as I sat with hurricane, because what it
we know if he's coming through there.
If he's frozen here and there, then it's got to be on his side.
He completely knocked out.
All right, I'm back, and I see that people can still hear me even if I was freezing. And you guys are on mute.
Marianne, you got us? All right, perfect.
Okay, so we're off mute, and
You were talking about not being afraid and standing like a mountain in the midst of a storm, Jerry. We're not hearing him. Is he there?
It isn't some stubborn, stoic person, but to hold on to what is the most important thing that we have going inside of ourselves, which is actually love.
correct.
More than anything else. So therefore, I am not afraid.
That's beautiful. I don't think most of the time I am either. But I think, and I'm positive of it because I do a big webinar every morning that hundreds of people show up for. And the only reason they're showing up is because they want to completely belong to a tribe. They want to belong to something. They feel shut out of everything else, and as a result of that, they're stuck. Is that what you're talking about? I mean, how do we get people to feel like they're inside and belonging to something?
Well, Tom, I think that the thing that became so evident in the last few months of it, that the world is filled with impermanence and that the world is just kind of a mess all the time. And that our big source of suffering stems from the fact that we don't want it to be that way. Well, the corollary to that, and what you're speaking to about the sense of belonging, is the fact that more than anything else, the antidote to that impermanence is community.
Wow.
That hits the nail on the head, which is exactly what we've been talking about. And so if we want to beat this game called fear and insecurity, the more community we have inside of deep feelings and talking that tough stuff out versus, oh, let's play like it didn't even happen. That's the answer to the whole deal, right, Jerry? Not avoiding, but being with it.
Introduction to me, you at that Longmont Startup Week talk. That's my language. I just showed up. I didn't come there saying, I'm going to be vulnerable. I'm going to be authentic. I don't even think about that. I just show up. And so that's what look, I need you to wear a mask. You need me to wear a mask. Can we have somebody who might be 1,000 miles away from me affects my...
If I turn off my camera, is that going to help?
So yeah, we're still fighting latency a little bit, Jerry. But I complete that act of showing up, I think is, and just what a difference it can make and did make when you, in the way that you showed up in that room, with not some puffed up sense of, oh, I'm so authentic and vulnerable, but just real and being real, and we all sensed that. And yet many of us, and I'll put my hand up as not being somebody who does that well most of the time, we're not very good at that. And so as you're working with people that have done a very good job of putting on some very nice looking armor over long successful careers, what do you do to help them to understand that their power actually comes from taking off some of that armor and showing up?
Well, Adrian, why did you learn to armor up?
That's a great question.
That's what a coach does.
What other to protect myself from what I perceived were people who were gonna make fun of me as a kid, or want to hurt me, or whatever it was that you put those things out around you thinking they're gonna protect you.
Right. So you're protecting yourself from shame.
Yeah.
You're protecting yourself from criticism.
Yeah.
So what we want to do in those moments is honor the fact that your strategy to protect yourself was designed with your best intentions in mind. And now the truth is you're not 5 anymore.
Yeah.
You're a man. Your father may not always see you that way, but you are a man.
Yeah.
And so you don't need to wear the armor. Here's a statistic, and Tom, you may relate to this. I could be wrong, but the last I heard that what the hell are we doing to people?
Yeah.
Right? We socialize our children to not only stand apart from one another, but to stand apart from our own hearts. And yet we just blithely talked about our hearts, love, our interconnectedness with each other as being the way that we're going to get through this time period. What a gift this time period is.
Wow. We're going to take a quick break, Jerry. And everybody during the break, you got to go buy this book right now. Reboot, Jerry Colonna. Go buy it. I'm telling you, it's going to give you access to what it is that is going to change your life. I promise you that. It did me. So go buy this book. We'll be back right after this on the Genesis Communication Network. All right, Adrian.
We're back.
Yeah. So those of you that noticed some problems with the technology, we have no idea what's going on, but I'll guarantee you we're going to fix it and keep this show going.
Yeah, absolutely.
What's going on with contact mapping?
The Murphy's Law of telecommunications, always at play. So it's the quote that you shared in the show that I thought was just incredible was the antidote to this fear being community. And I couldn't agree more, and it's been amazing because one of the things, so we've just done a pretty exciting relaunch of our company Contact Mapping, wherein we have a new premium platform, and a big part of what you get as a premium member is this new community where everything that we're about is helping people to unlock the value and the opportunity inside their network in a supportive community. And so we've created this brand new community. We're using something called Mighty Networks, which you may have heard of. Brad's been doing some stuff there as well. And just in a few days' time, the difference of what has been happening there versus what was happening previously in a group that we had on Facebook, just the kind of conversation and the interconnectedness and the camaraderie and people stepping up and sharing goals and sharing what they're afraid of. And I mean, it has blown me away. There's a pulse in this community that we have created in just a couple of days' time that's unlike anything that I have been a part of, certainly with contact mapping, but really unlike anything I've been a part of in any sense up until now. And it's been really inspiring, hasn't it?
Yeah. And while I came from the school of hard knocks, Jerry, Adrian was the international CFO at Rackspace. So he was that tightly wound corporate ladder climber upper. And at a very early age, he realized he was climbing the ladder, but it was leaned against the wrong wall. And he climbed down and climbed back up. And it's been guys like you that have shown him that the path that he's newly chosen is a wonderful path of realness. I mean, you're a rich, rich man in relationships, even though, you were onto an economic, that was the trajectory you had financially was unbelievable, but there was no self-worth there. And you have unbelievable peace about you now, don't you?
I hope so.
Yeah.
I way, that's for sure. But there's this, it's a journey. It's a journey that doesn't end. But a quick anecdote, I had something happen to me. I went through a pretty intensive leadership training course at my old company that they put on, and it was run by trained psychologists and psychiatrists, and they put us through a simulation and did all this stuff. And at the end, I sat down, and the lead person who ran the whole program said, "I'm glad that I got you as the person to do the final wrap up with. You don't seem to be aware, but you are really in a bad place, and you are not going to, this is not going to end well for you." And it was so jarring to me. I pretty much rejected it at the time. I said, thanks, but I think you got the wrong guy, kind of a thing. And it really has been a journey of unpacking all that armor and taking it off and putting it back on. And so much of the journey, and I know we got to wrap up the break here, but so much of the journey of contact mapping has been going on my own journey and trying to bring a community with us of living in our heart, living in community, and not just going and doing the things that you think other people want you to do.
Incredible.
Yeah.
All right. Wait 2 seconds. 1, 2. And we're back. This is the Network Marketing Leadership Show. We have got Adrian Chenault here, but what we really have is somebody that's, I don't think you can use the word mentor, because I don't ever get to talk to you, and I don't know you quite well, but I feel like I know you real well. I've listened to you on literally every podcast that you've been on. I know your blood type, sir, and it's
well, I don't.
because you have made such a massive impact on me, because I walked into AA 30 years ago. I go there every day of my life. And the reason is because of what your book talks about, that continual radical self-inquiry and sharing it with other people. And I didn't have any skills when I walked in there. I was a highfalutin stockbroker stuck on the skid row of success and had no clue as to what I was or who I was. I just knew I was miserable with a lot of money and drunk. And finally, after 30 years, I finally am starting to find my way. And when I interviewed you, all I could say to myself was, I wish I had had this book a long time ago. And I have literally spent every day since then instilling the thought processes of this book inside of Adrian, contact mapping, all the people around, because this is such an impact maker. And I know you train all the highfalutin, intellectual, rich people, but us lowfalutin, not so influential, poor people love you too. And I just want you to know that, because you're touching the entire spectrum of human beings, which is what we are, all we are. And thank you, sir.
Well, thank you for saying that. And I just want to say one thing. Thank you, Tom, for your commitment to the AA program.
Crazy.
It means the world that you are committed to doing that. And your son, look at what he just did. He just looked over at you and he said thank you.
Yeah, true story. Yeah, that's a long time between cocktails. But people,
amen.
Time why I go every day, and there's 2 reasons. One, I certainly don't want to start thinking I'm half as hip, slick, and cool as my paycheck thing is trying to tell me I am. And the second one is that still suffering alcoholic out there. We are living at a place where we get to impact people. In your book, that's what happens. We get to impact people. And our life mission is to leave a legacy of having human beings not feel like a number or a prospect, but just as a human being that we can contribute to and have our agenda be the agenda of the person across the table. And that takes, the only way that you can do that is to fire your brain and hire your heart, truly, and be actually with the person across the table, which is what your book taught us to do. So we're just playing in it. We're just following your lead, pal. I hate to break it to you. We're just and we know you love Seth Godin, and so do we. I mean, he is really, really good at what he does too, and he's another guy that's high on our list of pseudo mentors. So thank you.
Well, I think we're all just standing on the shoulders of giants.
Yeah.
Of the ancestors who came before us, of our fathers, our forefathers, our mothers, our parents, our teachers, all of whom end up sometimes beating us about the head saying, grow up, you have work to do.
Yeah.
So, and
you have to have read The Untethered Soul. Is that correct?
yeah, Michael Singer, I think it is.
Yeah, he wrote a book called The Surrender Experiment previous to that journey, talking about his journey from just a guy all the way to the head of WebMD, and talked about the fact that he only got in his own way when he tried to outthink God. And all the time that he just stood still and was able to breathe and say yes to literally everything because it was God's will that was even presenting it to him, everything shifted. And that's been an impactor for me too, because I'm done trying to control the universe and find people that tolerate me for what I supposedly have. Now I just want to embrace humanity at whatever level God's got in front of me. And I think that's kind of like goes along, I don't know the word, goes along with what you do in your life. I mean, you just show up and teach people to be real and say how they feel. And I loved you told a story in some podcast I saw about the chain link fence where it only swings in, and you don't have to let everybody in. You can look out there and you can say, you're over there and I'm going to pray for you and I hope your life is great, but you don't get to come in and disrupt my life. And I like that too, and it's really helped me. So thank you on that one too.
You're welcome. I'll bring it back to something Adrian was asking before about the armor that we carry. And we talked about the fact that we armor up to protect ourselves from shame. I will tell you, Adrian, that when you put the armor down,
Jerry, I don't know if you can hear us. We lost your audio for just a second here. So if I'm giving you an awkward pause, that's why.
Sure.
There we go. Okay.
Yeah.
Why don't we, since we kind of got busted up here, anyway, why don't we take a quick break?
All right, we're going to take a quick break. This is Genesis Communication Network. This is Tom Chenault. It's the Network Marketing Leadership Show, and we will be right back. Hopefully, welcome back to the commercial. Okay, those of you, I hope you guys all have audio, because this is the most unbelievable show, and maybe it's just our monitors that aren't picking up all the sound, but I'll tell you one thing right now. I love this guy, don't you?
Unbelievable. And I think it's such an important message, wherever you are on your journey. And I want to save this for after the break, because I think it's such an important conversation. But however you became successful, to the extent you've become successful, there's all these bargains, I think, that you make along the way that you don't think too much about until they've accumulated to a place where you have to go back and realize what that's cost you. And so I want to talk about that a little bit after the break, but I think that's this is so important to help people to grow wherever they are. And so, Jerry, I'd love to talk kind of for the break portion, to talk a little bit about communication and relationship building, and how does the work that you do show up in coaching people about how to come across differently in the relationships that they build out there in the world, whether they're whether they're in a sales kind of a role or whatever that is. How does your work speak to that area?
Do you remember when I opened up the conversation at the Longmont Startup Week?
I don't remember how you did it, no.
So the first thing I tend to do at a talk is ask the audience, how are you?
Yeah, I remember.
Now you're smiling because you remember that.
Yeah.
But when people get stuck in that question, I mean, most of us, the minute that somebody asks us that question, we're thinking of a defense answer.
Yeah, the tape, we just roll the tape.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Which is dangerous stuff, I think.
Right. So imagine you opened up your communications with people that you love, your family members, your colleagues, your sales prospects, your customers, with a genuine interest in how their heart is. Imagine that you actually cared about other people. Imagine that you got out of your own way and your own fear long enough to look a cab driver in the eye before you boarded the car and said, how are you doing today? What if we did that every day?
Changed world.
Be a changed world.
I can't believe, like, how is, and you're 100% right. And, you know, how is it that just asking the question everyone asks in a way where you really mean it is enough to transform the world, and yet it really, really is. And we're so taken aback when someone asks the question that way and stops to listen.
Because we're socialized not to answer that question.
Yeah.
And the second problem is that we're afraid of the answer. If I ask you, Adrian, how are you doing? And you say, I'm struggling, I don't know how to fix it.
Yeah.
So I'd rather not ask. And so the problem is we're socialized to believe that we're supposed to fix everybody. But we fix problems, not people.
Yeah.
People are not problems. People are just people.
That's
wow.
Big. That's
Yeah.
really
In
big.
fact, you see me look for your pen? I was going to jot that. I'm going, where the hell do I write that down? Yeah. You know, and what you say is so basic and so, you know, all I ever say is wow. And I was just looking through your book here that Adrian had read, and you guys go buy the book. The book is going to blow your mind, but he's underlined this book so much and highlighted it, it's frightening. We're going to go back to the show right now, so stick around. I talk too much. And we're back. It's Tom Chenault, and it's the Network Marketing Leadership Show. We got Adrian here, but we got Jerry Colonna, and we want to talk as little as possible and listen as much as we can.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah, I want you to fire it up.
Good. So one of the things, this is the Network Marketing Leadership Show. So we work especially with a lot of people in network marketing or multi-level marketing. And these people have big dreams. Oftentimes they've been successful somewhere else in the world, but they come into this new space where it's really about people. And it tends to peel back a lot of the things that happened to you along the way that made you successful that aren't going to work in this new world. And so I'd love for you to talk to that sort of persona and to talk about some of the things that you shared at Longmont Startup Week and have shared in your book Reboot about examining how you got to where you are today and to really kind of walk yourself back through that. So can you talk about some of the questions that you like to ask people to open their eyes in that way, Jerry?
Sure. I'll answer the question, but first I want to make this statement that you made the point that people come to the network marketing with big dreams. And so I'll tell you what I heard with an open heart. What I heard was pain, wishes, failures and successes. And so what I would encourage people to do is to start with reconnecting with who they were when they were 5 or who they were when they were 8. Because that's the root of the dream.
Wow.
And what they may, and then to answer your question, what they then need to do is to understand the environment in which that 8-year-old was nurtured. What fears did your parents have about money? What was the environment that cooked you, that made you, that in which you marinated? Reach across the table to someone else and connect to them, because they too have the same big dreams. Instead of turning every engagement into a transaction, use empathy as so that people can be people together. We're all just broken-hearted warriors, as I say in my book, trying to traverse a world that is painful. Let's do it together. Let's hang out together. Let's be friends. Oh, and, oh, by the way, I might be able to help you and you might be able to help me. Well, long-winded response to your question, Adrian, but it was an important question.
It was poetry, and that empathy toward yourself and then toward others. And I think sometimes we get that out of order, and I'd be curious to hear if you agree with this, but I think I often, as we're talking to our clients, they're much more ready to be empathetic towards others' struggles, but maybe the depth of their ability to do so is inhibited by not having gone and been empathetic toward their own journey. Would you agree with that, Jerry?
I don't think that what you're speaking about people striving to do, I think it's well-intentioned, but it's sympathetic. It's not empathetic.
Yeah.
See, sympathy exists when there is very little self-awareness. Empathy can only exist when there's self-awareness. But one of the myths that we're socialized with, indulgent. And there's nothing self-indulgent about understanding who you are, what you believe. That's not self-indulgent.
You're absolutely right. In fact, doing that in a real way is kind of the opposite of self-indulgent. It can be really painful. It's a lot of work.
Well, all growing up is a lot of work. That's why most people don't do it.
Yeah.
It's hard. But when we start from that place and then we touch into just that whole question, like me, Adrian, you get afraid. Me, Tom, you have self-doubts. Like me, you have wishes and dreams. Like me, you care about the future. Like me, you worry about the present. Like me, you may obsess about the past.
Wow. So the whole thing here is pretty much, instead of trying to grow up, you grow down. You go back to that 8-year-old and you see where that started, the root of it, and then you start looking at where you had your break in belonging, that you kind of gave up on your dreams, and you start over. But it's all radical self-inquiry, which goes right back to his book.
That's right.
That you go back to that 8-year-old and you take his hand and you carry him into the future. You go back as the adult that you are and you say, it's okay. I know you feel scared. I know you feel alone. I know you feel ashamed. You're going to be okay, because I'm.
I think that why we're all so afraid to take it on like you take it on is because we've been trained to desensitize and find some intellectual path that is going to trump the emotional and relational path that you're telling us to go back to. So what basically we're saying is go back from all that brainy stuff that you supposedly were going to use to get to the top of the mountain with all the training and all that jazz, and go back to becoming your real you. Go back to finding yourself, because people are going to find themselves in you, them in you finding you. And I love that whole, I mean, it's kind of what it's all about. And find the tribe that loves you.
My teacher, Parker Palmer, likes to say that violence is what we do when we don't know what to do with our suffering.
Yeah.
And Tom, what you just described is the ways in which we do not teach children what to do with their suffering.
Yeah. And the trouble with it all is we don't figure it out until we're so damn old that it's too late for us. It's too late to teach our kids. So it's on you to teach your kids, because your kids are under 8. Yeah. And we've got to change this whole generation that to see that it's okay to open up and talk about it instead of suppress it and do some absolute behavior to hide it, because it's messing up an entire generation or generations. And I think, obviously with your Buddhism background and, the fact that you coach the level of people that you do on what you coach them about, which is feelings. It's like Brené Brown. It just absolutely blows my mind, A, that you do it, and number 2, that people are so obsessed with hearing it, because it's in your heart, and you had to fire your brain to get to your heart to be able to hear it. But Jerry, you're speaking so loudly, and we need it so badly, right?
Yeah, we really do.
Well, can I say one thing to you, Tom?
Sure.
It's not too late for you.
Oh, thank God. I'm 69. Are you sure?
Yes. Yes.
Good.
Because, we're joking here, but I'm not joking, Tom. I know that you carry that fear. It's not too late.
After 32 years of sobriety and some pretty significant success on a business front, to have that little Philip Seymour Hoffman flicker thought in the back of my mind once in a while that scares the living crud out of me, like no alternative to go drink, no alternative to go give up, just completely check out, is like the grim dark reaper that almost runs my life, because I know it's sitting there and I know I haven't touched it yet. And you're 100% right. That's the kind of thing that a Tom Chenault needs to reach into and face versus ignore. And I've done a lot. I mean, a ton of personal development. But at the end of the day, you're 100% right. And I know, sir, that it is not too late. And it is something that you see something that needs addressed, and you're 100% right.
Well, 2 things I would say in response to that. One is, again, you're not alone with those Hoffman-like moments. Remember that. Because part of the lies that we tell ourselves when we struggle is that we're the only one.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Joseph Campbell said, "The treasure you seek is in the back of the cave."
I love that slide you had.
The back of the cave is that fear, because behind the belief that it's too late, is another belief. And that belief is, I'm not enough. But you are enough. And you're not alone. And it's not too late. Because every day you wake up, and not only do you go to a meeting, but you go back to the back of the cave. Because that's where the treasure is. And your son is moved to know that you have these feelings. And for as much success as you have in your life, is there anything more precious than the relationship you have with children, with grandchildren, with spouses, with friends?
No, and there isn't.
You're enough for them.
Yeah. And I look inside of why I have been so obsessed with having you on the show. And I think it was probably this little piece of conversation right here, that I could just, I knew it's one of those things that's almost so elusive because it's a fleeting thought that that one of these days it's not going to be fleeting anymore. It's going to be a prevalent thought unless it gets dealt with. And that's exactly, you're 100% right. And I don't think I'm alone. And I just know that I need to be around people brave enough to go in the cave with me and look as deep as it needs to go to see what's going on. So thank you.
Do we have to do a break? Because I could bring your attention to something.
Yeah, so remember where we are because I want to continue this, but we're taking a break right now on the Genesis Communication Network. We'll be right back. And we're back. Yeah, well, that was that went a little deeper than I thought we were going to go. But we'll come back to it right after the break.
Yeah, we'll come back to it after the break. But, for any of us, he was talking to you, but I heard it for me. And so did everyone. I think we all apply those same fears and those same thoughts. And that's exactly speaks to this sense that we're not alone and that we go on this journey together. And that part, that I feel like a big part of our calling is contact mapping is to help to be willing to create the space to forge that, to create a community that are going to go and have that journey.
Yeah,
together.
You got to go beyond the superficial. I mean, everybody has to feel remembered, loved, that they're safe, that they belong. Everything Jerry talked about on the bottom of that main slide is exactly what our emphasis on our life is, which is keeping people % held. And thank you for that, Jerry. It's unbelievable.
Yeah. I should have warned you, Tom, that I was going to go there with you.
Yeah, well, that was, that was pretty crazy. Yeah. And the second you spun that, I went, I am dead. The thing about that is human beings, I had a choice right there. There was a V in the road to divert it and completely avoid it or walk in and get punched in the face. And, my whole life has been given, avoiding it, whatever it was, alcohol, drugs, whatever, infidelity. That was the choice I made to avoid going here, which is exactly why all of you people need to buy this book, because I guarantee you, I know I'm not alone. I know that we all suffer with this disease called being human. It's pretty cool disease.
Well, I hope that I didn't punch you in the face so much as grab your hand and walk you to the back of the cave.
100%.
Don't worry. He's prone to such hyperbole.
Well,
but it's true. The human condition is everywhere and it's terminal, and that's actually the beautiful thing about it is that we're all in that. And I think one of the big transformations that I have been through personally, and that hopefully we're helping people to do inside of our community, is the challenge is not to overcome your humanity. The challenge is to embrace it instead of resisting it the way that I did for such a long time. And when you do, all of a sudden you become attractive in a new way to other people. And that helps you to grow your business. It helps you to have a much better way of going, I think, in life on so many levels. But it actually, even the external things that you're searching for that you think if I go there, I won't be able to get what I want, that actually unlocks it at maybe the moment when certainly I least expected it in letting down that shield.
Yeah. So you guys need to go to contactmapping.com. We're supposed to have commercials all the way through this thing.
It's just too
but
deep.
Jerry,
I don't feel like I can sell it. It's like I
we're
want to
just
talk about it.
Completely mesmerized by the conversation, because this conversation is exactly what we want to be when we grow up. Inside of the contact mapping community, inside of the philosophy, inside of the training, and inside of the app. And Jerry Colonna is somebody that every one of you need to follow and know, and not just his book, but his podcasts and everything else, because you'll get great freedom, and he quotes everybody. You can't believe it. And big stuff. I mean, exciting stuff. Sharon Salzberg you sent me on a chase after her too when you mentioned she was your mentor, as well as that Peter guy. So we're coming back right now for the rest of the show. So here we go. We're back. It's the Network Marketing Leadership Show with Tom Chenault, Adrian Chenault, and Jerry Colonna. Final segment. We were going down a very deep rabbit hole before we went to the break. And Jerry, you want to continue that thought a little bit? I have a feeling so.
Yeah, I just wanted to bring your attention to what I did.
Okay.
So you had made this long statement, and you prefaced it by saying it might be too late.
Yeah.
And then I brought you back to that half a sentence. And I suspect by bringing you back to that, you may have felt heard in a way that you really hadn't experienced before. And so I want to bring it all the way back to the opening conversation that we had, which was, so I don't sit down and say, I'm going to be authentic. I'm going to be vulnerable. I just show up. And that experience of me hearing you was a manifestation of my heart being open to hearing something that was really important and something that perhaps you wanted to be heard but weren't really sure should be heard, because it's a little scary to be heard.
Who could I tell it to?
You can tell it to me.
Yeah, I know. I felt that. That's why I did it. And I've never said it to him.
But now you did.
Yeah.
And he loves you more now because you showed that. Not less, more. Because you showed up.
Yeah.
So to close the loop and tie this together with a ribbon, I show up, which makes it safe for you to show up, which helps you feel heard, which creates an empathetic connection between the two of us. And all the people who are listening in that moment, who don't feel that they're enough, who worry that it's too late, who worry that they won't be loved, in that moment, instead of feeling disconnected from you, they felt more connected to you. All because you allowed me to hear you. So thank you for that.
You're welcome. And where everybody needs to know is Jerry wasn't born this way. He had a tough time when he was 18 years old. Then he went on to unbelievable financial success with a magazine and then with Fred Wilson, and going from there to obviously building some giant stuff before he just decided that it was time to really, really get serious and look at himself. Ended up at a treatment center down in Arizona, found himself, found his path, found his calling. And now he lives a life he loves that is unbelievably powerful, as you just witnessed. But what is important about that is every one of us have that in us. If we'll just rewind the tape to the good part and just go that route back down the road and choose a different path on the road to get to where Jerry is right now, or several people want to be. And I just am in awe of knowing your story and knowing who you become and how you become by just being is remarkable. You know, Naropa University, I just wish I would have known about that a long time ago too. And just the various things you've done are just magnificent, sir, and thank you.
Well, thank you. And it's still uncomfortable to hear such praise, but I will take it. And I will tell you, thank you for seeing my story, for understanding my story as well as you have. It means a lot to me.
No, we're humans.
We are. And every one of us, me, you, Jerry, I mean, we are all at varying stages of this journey. But Jerry's work out in the world, Jerry's book in Reboot is, I think, really a place where I encountered an invitation to go back into those things that I have always known on some level that I needed to, and yet was very good at avoiding, and at least so I thought, very good at making sure that was kind of hidden from everybody else. And so if you are listening to this conversation or watching this conversation and you have that stirring, I would just encourage you to really go and check out this book as a starting place for that conversation, because I think it's going to grab you in a way that other things that I have experienced along the way I have not, and I've been able to kind of shrug them off, I guess you could say. And what Jerry's work does really, for me, has cut to the heart of it, and I think challenged me and shook me in a way that got me to the place where I was ready to open up. And so thank you, Jerry, for that. But I really do. I encourage you, as you listen and watch this, if you're stirred by this, to go and start there. And there's a lot of other great stuff out there, but this is a really, really good place to start.
And aren't you proud of the fact that from a year and a half ago, when I was falling in love with him, you're really using him as your inaugural guy in this big launch of your contact mapping community, and he's the main guy, which is just beautiful, sir. And you have no idea the impact you made, and we're going to further your message all over this planet, and you can take credit for as much of it as you want. We can't thank you enough for coming on the show. You are our idol, Jerry. Thanks a million, and have an unbelievably great day.
Thanks. You too, guys. It was really a pleasure to be with you.
All right. Thanks a lot.
Thanks. Take care, Jerry.